friends. I'm Asiatu,
And I'm Mary.
and together we're the Audacious Autistics podcast. We're both queer, non-binary, intuitive coaches creating a safe space to discuss everything from autism to astrology, including social justice, intersectionality, and more, living unmasked and out loud.
Before we get started with today's episode, we just want to take a moment to thank our Patreon family and all of those that support our podcast in any way. Whether you share our episodes on social media, buy our merch, send us tips on Venmo and Cash App when you have the funds, we appreciate you all so very much.
Yay.
If you would like to receive more personalized content and you're able to help support us financially, the links to our Patreon can be found in the description, and the tiers start at just $3 a month. Earlier this month, we released a Patreon-only bonus episode about executive dysfunction, so be sure to check that out there. So thank you for joining us for our 5th official episode in the All the Things series. And in this episode, we are finishing the conversation about ADHD and autism, or like we like to refer to it, AuDHD, which is how we merge the two. If you haven't already heard the first one, be sure to check that out. In that episode, we talk about the basics of ADHD and the 3 types of ADHD, stereotypes with ADHD, and lesser known traits of ADHD. We also talk about time blindness and object permanence and similarities and differences with autism and so much more. So be sure to check that one out if you haven't already. In this episode, we're going to cover spoon and fork theories. We're going to talk about positive traits of ADHD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, coping tools, and whatever else our ADHD selves decide to ramble on about. One thing that I did want to touch on prior to hopping into this episode is a question that I've gotten from multiple people after the first ADHD and autism episode that we put out. And the question goes something like, I have ADHD. If I resonate with everything that you all are talking about, am I also autistic? First of all, we can't answer that based solely on that knowledge, right? I can only give you more resources and support you on your journey to discover what labels and diagnoses are right for you. So we can send you down the rabbit hole to figure that out. We can provide you support and resources, but that is a journey specifically for you. But quickly, I do want to highlight some autistic traits that so far haven't been tied to ADHD. So this could give you an idea. If you resonate with these things, they're much more autism related than they are ADHD related, but they can also be due to things like complications during pregnancy or birth, your genes and heredity, trauma, etc. So some of these things are repetitive movements, lining things up, right, as we're like doing all the repetitive movements. Lining things up and separating things into piles is much more an autistic thing. Differences in societal communication, such as eye contact, voice tone, pitch, facial expressions, matching emotions, etc., much more tied to autism. Inflexibility in routine, leading to a meltdown for different reasons than ADHD. So if you remember in the first episode, we talked about how meltdowns come with both ADHD and being autistic, but they're due to different things. So back to that episode for more on that. Sensory issues leading to meltdowns is much more an autism thing, whereas executive dysfunction and meltdowns is much more an ADHD thing. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about with that is delayed or very advanced developmental milestones in a child, such as speech impediments, language delays, speaking quite early, differences in how you play, right? So if you don't play like neurotypical children, fine and gross motor skill delay or severe advancement of fine and gross motor skills, and so much more. But I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that if those things are checking your boxes, then I would definitely go down the rabbit hole of, are you up? We're here to support that journey. Okay, so just to get that stuff out of the way, now we can get into our agenda, which starts with fork and spoon theories.
So, spoon theory is older than fork theory, so I'll start with spoon theory. It was created by Christine Miserandino.
Miss Sabino? Yeah.
Anyway, we'll have that information in the link. Yeah, Miss Arandino, I think. She created spoon theory to explain chronic illness and specifically her lupus. So it's usually more so attributed to those with chronic physical illness, whereas fork theory is usually attributed more so with mental health. But spoon theory basically is this idea that we each have a limited amount of energy to expend throughout the day on, in general, but specifically also on tasks as far as just basic tasks such as brushing our teeth or driving to work or eating or whatever the case is. And so what she was trying to explain to others, being that she had lupus, was that she doesn't have the same energy reserves, or that it takes actually more energy for her to do basic things, which means that she's left with less spoons. So each spoon represents a certain amount of energy that it takes to complete a task. Mm-hmm. And so when you hear a lot of people who are chronically ill say that they're out of spoons, it's basically saying they don't have the energy to actually, they're out of energy, they're depleted. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, like, small tasks, or what are considered small tasks by able-bodied people, such as brushing your teeth or combing your hair or, packing lunches for the kids, usually takes less energy than for someone who's chronically ill and has limited, overall, like, energy, and just doing something like a task of like brushing your teeth expends more energy and depletes them more. Yeah. I hope I explained that well.
Yeah, so it's like, somebody that isn't chronically ill may wake up and spoons aren't a thing for people that aren't chronically ill, right? Like, they have reserved energy that you can tap into, and you can get all of the things on your list done in the day, no matter what. But a lot of times people that are chronically ill will wake up with only 6 spoons. And if taking a shower takes 4 spoons, then they're only left with 2 spoons for the rest of their day. And maybe brushing their teeth is 2 spoons, right? So people that are chronically ill really have to pick and choose where they put their energy in those days. So I know for myself, who I am chronically ill, I refer to myself as a spoonie in multiple different levels. And so one of the things for me is communicating with people, having conversations with people takes a lot of my spoons. And so if I wake up and in that day, and it's not a set amount of spoons per day, right? It's going to be based on,
it fluctuates.
Yeah, it fluctuates. So if I wake up one day and I am exhausted and I only have 6 spoons, and I know that I need to get something done that day, then maybe I'm not communicating with anyone that day, because I know that a conversation with said person is going to take up 3 of my spoons. And then I'm left with only 3 spoons to do everything else I have to do that day. And so, yeah, so hopefully that helps kind of bring that all together, and obviously ask questions or whatever in the description and we'll go more into it. But yeah, so just a brief summary of spoon theory.
So then there's fork theory, which appeared on Tumblr in 2018, or at least went viral around that time. Neither Marie or I could figure out who the actual person or creator of fork theory was. There's usually a Tumblr post of a woman speaking about her husband who came up with the idea of fork theory.
Yeah, I think that person's name is Jen Rose, but I don't know if that is the originator or not. But anyway.
So fork theory is similar to spoon theory, but it's actually coming from from the opposite perspective, in the sense that fork theory is rooted in having a limit, in the sense of the whole "put a fork in me, I'm done" is basically what it's rooted in. So basically it's how much energy is expended, and also like basically how draining basically each individual thing is. So spoon theory is I only have a set amount of spoons per day that fluctuate per day, but a set amount of spoons. Fork theory is every time I expend energy on a task and I get to my limit, that's another fork in me. Mm-hmm. So brushing my teeth is a fork, eating is a fork. Talking to people and having conversations is a fork. And each person has their own individual limit of how many forks can occur without there being a total shutdown and dysregulation. So, and it varies per individual, clearly. So same with spoon theory. So for me, one day I can do, I can have 5 forks and then I'm just like, all right, I'm done for the day. I can't do anything else. Other days I have 10 forks. Other days I have 2 forks. Other days I have no forks. Mm-hmm. So it's slightly different in that sense. And then also, again, because it pertains more so to mental health. So it's slightly different in that sense. And there's a woman on TikTok and her handle is Catieosaurus, Catieosaurus on TikTok. And she basically has a really good video, which we will also link, but I'll just do a summary of it in the sense that she relates specifically the fork theory to ADHD. Mm-hmm. And the way that she explains it is, say, each fork represents a task. And for the average person, it's just one fork and it's just each one is a task. For someone with ADHD, each fork, because of our executive dysfunction, mainly more so than anything, it takes us many more steps to actually complete the task. So for the average person, this fork is, okay, eating. And then this fork is, getting the kids ready. And this fork is, driving to work. For us, it's like, okay, getting the kids ready requires us to constantly remind them or to constantly check in with ourselves to get make sure that the clothes are ready, to make sure that the laundry's done, to make sure each individual thing is multiple. And so by the end of the day, we have just a gazillion forks just all over the place, and it's just exhausting. And that's what fork theory is about. And it's really tiring. It's really, really, really tiring. So it's never just simple. So anything that one would say, oh, well, brushing your teeth is, just a simple task. For me, having sensory issues, for me being autistic, for me having ADHD. So for me to actually remember that, okay, so I have to brush my teeth. So I have to physically get myself into the bathroom in front of my toothbrush, grab the toothbrush and put the toothpaste on it. Then there's all types of sensory stuff going on. And the reality is, just walking to the bathroom, something else can distract me. And then I can go down a rabbit hole with something else. And then I'm like, oh shit, I was supposed to go brush my teeth. So let me walk to the bathroom again. I get to the bathroom and I'm like, oh shit, the toilet needs to be cleaned. Let me do that. And then I clean the toilet. So the whole concept of me just quote unquote brushing my teeth ends up me doing like 10 other different tasks and requires much more energy than the average person. And hence executive dysfunction, which is a classic ADHD trait and also autism trait too. So it's both, can be either or both.
Yeah. And one of the other main issues between fork and spoon theory, or differences between the two, with spoons, you really can't take them away or bring any more into our world. Like, that is chronic illness, right? We have what we have, and that's pretty much it. Like, if I take a shower, it's taking my spoons away. But with fork theory, sometimes taking a shower will then allow me some space to be able to take some more spoons on during my day, because when it's regarding my mental health, sometimes taking a shower will then make me feel better, right? It'll make me feel more resourced, etc. But when it comes to spoons, showering is going to take my spoons. So someone that is dealing with chronic illness and mental health stuff, and they're shuffling their forks and their spoons, they have to make these decisions. Is it worth my spoons to be able to pick up more forks, or do I have to figure out another way to navigate it? So forks there are things we can do throughout our day to be able to take on more forks. Sometimes that's napping, sometimes that's going to therapy, sometimes that's exercising. It's going to be different for each person, but spoon theory really isn't that way. Like what we have during that day, that's what we have regardless. And once they're gone, they're gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also I just wanted to add, there's also a layover from individual days. So if you're in the negative of one day of spoons and then you go to the next day, it doesn't necessarily translate to a restart. It still can mean that you're still working from the negative, which causes even more dysregulation, which weighs you down even more, which means that you have to regulate even more what you can and cannot do. And sometimes you just literally can't do anything, and that's okay too. And not being productive at all, and basically caring for yourself and allowing for that time to let your body rest is just as valid as the days where you are productive. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is the strengths that come with having ADHD or being ADHD. So we love this conversation because it gets missed a lot in the world, and we're all about smashing the negative stigmas around things. And having ADHD is beautiful in so many ways. Being autistic is beautiful in so many ways. So let's check it out a little bit. I think one of our favorites that I want to start with is the fact that we have the ability to be experts in our field. Yes. Right? We have the ability to hyper fixate, hyper focus, and fully really understand the things that we're interested in and become experts in that. And I think so often that is missed, that we have that ability. So let's start there and just kind of go through some stuff that we see as strengths.
Love that. And that was one of the things that I had on my list, is that we're able to learn really quickly. I will say this, especially if you're a parent with a child with ADHD, we are interest motivated. It has to be interesting to us. If we don't have that interest, it doesn't matter what we do, what you do, what anybody does. It literally just does not happen in our brain. So the best way that you can help somebody with ADHD is to highlight their special interests, to engage with their interests, to help them explore new ideas and things that they may even be interested in. But until we have that, that interest and that piques our interest, it's literally we just physically, mentally can't. And we shouldn't be chastised or judged or penalized for that reality, because that's just how our brains work.
Yep, for sure.
We also tend to be super creative. So not only are we able to learn things fast, but we also have a natural tendency to think outside the quote unquote box, and to think of different ways, and this is when the autism kicks in for me, is my creativity from the ADHD is also heightened by the fact that my autism, I have pattern recognition. And so I merge the two, and then I become an educator and an entrepreneur. So, so there's also,
there's all the ways that we communicate better than people that aren't autistic and don't have ADHD, right? We're honest, we're direct.
Yes.
And that is a beautiful way to communicate. We
authentic
are less likely to have a hidden agenda, less reading between the lines, less passive aggressive behavior, specifically if the ADHD is tied to being autistic, but even neurodivergency in general, it's less likely to have those things. And those are great things having to do with communication. So when I hear people say that neurodivergent people aren't good communicators, I question what is on their list that makes someone a good communicator.
We're not good neurotypical communicators because we're not neurotypical.
Right.
And so that's the difference. We're good communicators within those who understand us, within our community, and we're just very direct. And a lot of times we're penalized for being so direct and considered rude as opposed to direct. And we're not rude, we're direct, because rude implies malice. Rude implies you're trying to be hurtful. You're consciously trying to be hurtful towards somebody. And we're not. That is not our intentions. How we speak sometimes may be so direct that it might hurt somebody's feelings, but that was never our intention.
Sure.
To, that wasn't our goal.
Yeah. And we could go on and on about the communication conversation, but we won't.
So ADHD, there's a balance between like impulsivity, which is, usually deemed negative. But the flip side of that and the positive side of that is we tend to be risk takers. Mm-hmm. We tend not to necessarily care about, outside validation or care about someone telling us that we can't. In fact, if someone tells us that we can't do something, that usually motivates us more to prove to them that we can and that we are capable.
We're courageous.
Which is why we tend to be really successful entrepreneurs, because we are open to taking those risks that most people would play it safe, and they wouldn't necessarily grow or evolve in the ways in which we are. And so between the creativity and the innovation and the hyper focus and the risk taking, we're amazing entrepreneurs.
And attention to detail. So our ability to see the details and pattern recognition that you already talked about, like there is so much thoroughness that can come in, not only in communication, but in work, and attention to detail that gets missed when I'm working with people that are not neurodivergent, right? It is so clear to me when I'm working with someone that is neurodivergent and when I'm working with someone that is not neurodivergent. And it often comes down to the amount of attention to detail, the amount that someone assesses things. And this can be very, very hard for us to carry as neurodivergent people, because it takes, it's our hyper focus, but it's also a trauma response, right? For us to be so aware of every aspect of things. So So I can recognize where this is a heavy positive thing, right? To be so aware of the world and attention to detail, but it's also a very, very beautiful thing that we have the ability to do that a lot of people don't have that same attention to detail and thoroughness in their work and their communication and their being.
We're also, I kind of touched on this, but we're passionate. We're very passionate. We hypersensate. And I love that, as opposed to being sensitive, because sensitive has such negative connotations. But yeah, we tend to feel things more deeply than superficial. And that also is how we connect to one another is, on more of a deeper level. We don't do superficial. Superficial just doesn't work for us. We hate superficial.
We're great conversationalists. Yes. When you skip the small talk and you get to the juice, you get to the deep, real communication and connection. We are great and engaging conversationalists when it's not surface level, but a lot of us can't get into that surface level part, and we don't because we don't understand it, because we don't have the energy for it, because of X, Y, Z, all the reasons. But when it's something that is something that we're passionate about, and even for me, if it's something that the other person is passionate about.
I was just about to say that. I was literally just thinking that.
I love to hear people info dump to me about their special interests. It brings me so much joy.
I love it. Just to see someone so joyous and happy in explaining something. It's just such a beautiful thing.
I love it.
And I've said this many times before, but info is our love language. So neurodivergent people, majority of us, information is our love language. So we don't want to do superficial. We want that deep dive. We want to connect on a deeper level. We want to know what makes you happy. We want to know what makes you passionate, what goals you have, like not who you, like not where you work and like, necessarily even just superficial hobbies, but what brings you joy? What brings you peace? Like, what are you passionate about? Where do you see yourself, in the grand scheme of things? Like, what are your strengths? I love asking people what their strengths are. And it's so sad that so many people don't even stop to think about it. Like, who are you outside of the superficial, outside of the materialistic, outside factors like your job and your job title? who are you? Like your actual character. Like
Mhm.
who, like tell me about who you are and whatever that looks like. Like what was your favorite childhood movie? Like that's the type of stuff I want to know. That to me is my small talk.
Yes.
Like I want to know
Yes.
all the things, all the details. Like I want to know what makes you smile, what makes you scared, what makes
Yeah.
you uncertain, like all of that. And another thing is that we're high energy. When we're motivated, we have really high energy and we can deep dive and that combined with the time blindness, we can literally fall down rabbit holes
We
and
lose
be there for
hours.
hours. And then we wake up and we look up and we're just like, oh shit, I haven't eaten in like 10 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but it was so worth it because it's so fulfilling and
Yeah.
it's so it's just such a wonderful experience. Like, oh God, I love falling down rabbit holes. I love them.
Me too. Me too. And I think one of my favorite things about recognizing my neurodivergencies and honoring those things in myself is that now when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling disconnected, when I'm feeling myself go into burnout or come up on a meltdown, I know that if I allow myself the time to get into one of my special interests and fixate on one of those, that it will almost always allow me to regulate myself, right? I don't need anybody else in my space. Give me what my interest is and allow me to lose myself in there for a moment, and my nervous system and my body will regulate itself. And I find it such a beautiful thing that I didn't allow myself for 29 years of my life. And like it's so beautiful that we can get so wrapped up in the joy of little things that connect with us for whatever reason. So love it, love it, love it, love it.
And because we pay attention to details, we're going to remember the little things. Like that's another positive, especially within relationships, is we're really going to get to know you, and we're going to get to know what makes you personally tick, what makes you personally happy. The little things like your favorite foods and your favorite places and your favorite animals and your favorite color and all that stuff. We're going to be authentically interested in learning those things and connecting to you because information is our love language. So that's another bonus of having ADHD.
And when we talk about these like positive traits about ADHD and whatever, recognizing that they're not going to be the same for everyone. These aren't going to tick everyone's boxes, especially if you're in burnout, especially if you're overwhelmed. Like it's hard to connect to some of these things, and I can recognize that, like working memory, right? So a lot of times we won't remember the conversations that we had, and sometimes they'll come back when something gets prompted for us or whatever. But these aren't going to be for everyone, and just kind of putting that there for anyone that's like, oh no, I don't feel myself in any of these. Like that's okay. I'm not, we're not saying that that's going to be for everyone. These are just some that came up for us. So a little sidebar. Okay, so we good on positives? Anything else you want to? Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about is something that comes up a lot of time in people that have ADHD and also autistic people, and it is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So rejection sensitivity dysphoria was coined by William Dodson, and it is referred to as a triggered, wordless, emotional pain that occurs after a real or perceived loss of approval, love, or respect. So again, a triggered, wordless emotion, especially painful emotion, that occurs after a real or perceived loss of approval, love, or respect. So rejection sensitivity dysphoria isn't an actual diagnosis. It's not recognized in mental health as of yet. Rejection sensitivity, however, is, and there's a ton of research on it. So the dysphoria part of it comes in where this can happen even if it's not a real loss of approval, love, or respect, right? It's the perceived loss of approval, love, or respect that makes it a dysphoria. Okay, so those are the difference in rejection sensitivity and rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
So Connor, Connor Wolf is an ADHD TikTok. He also has autism, I think. But he described it really well because he had a TikTok that was basically like, why do you always take down your videos, after you post them, or some of them, or a lot of them? And he was just like, because I have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And then he was just like, well, he basically doesn't feel secure that people will like it or whatever the case is. And then he was just like, the person would respond, well, it doesn't everybody go through that? And the difference is his perception of the situation isn't real. So people have insecurities, yes. People, we're human, so we do seek outside validation to a certain extent. The difference is his is more so imaginary in the sense that it hasn't happened yet. And there's no indication that it will happen. It's just perceived that it's going to happen. And that's different than having authentic insecurities because somebody has actually done something specifically to trigger you or indicate that, they don't like you, whatever the case is. So that's the major difference. I hope I explained that well.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying at least.
But I'm talking to myself. You're me.
I know. I know. So ask us, let us know. Like we can get
feel
more
free to
resource.
shoot us a question if you don't understand, because I will be happy to explain it better.
Yeah. And like often rejection sensitivity dysphoria is very common in the queer community. It's also very common in the neurodivergent community. And one of the things that those two communities have in common, besides being all the same, they often throughout their lives consistently hear, whatever it is you're doing, it's wrong, right? You're doing it wrong. And so we start to assume and perceive that everything we do, every time we put ourselves out there, every situation is going to come back to us that we're doing it wrong. And normally this will end up in two ways for someone, or a mixture of both of them, right? So if you have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, often you may become a people pleaser, or you may become some sort of okay, I hate this label, but that's what it's called, defiant disorders. So whether it's PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance, or ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, a lot of times you will see that someone will go one of those two ways or a mixture of both. So for myself, I had a mixture of both, and I had to really dissect why it was that I was people pleasing, why it was that I, have this PDA and how it shows up and whatever. But a lot of times it just comes from us being so tired of always getting negative reactions as children. And then our minds, right, form these perceived negative lack of love, respect, lack of whatever, as we move forward. And then we become people pleasers, so we don't have that happen anymore. But then we lose ourselves in becoming people pleasers. So it's this cycle that's really hard to navigate, and which is why it hasn't yet been put as an official diagnosis, because there's so many things that come into it. But it's very, very common in our community. So we did want to talk about it briefly, at least.
And then I just also wanted to say, for the opposite end of the people pleasing, and for those who are the other end of the spectrum, or a combination of both, it all comes down to feeling a lack of control. Mm-hmm. So for those kids that that are super defiant, or have quote unquote behavioral outbursts or issues, it's from a lack of a sense of control. So as a kid, if you're constantly told that and being invalidated and saying that you're wrong, and doing things and being perceived as a failure or whatever the case is, you either stop trying, or you try to control the environment as much as you can, so you can feel safe and you can feel protected. So keep that in mind, that behaviors are always symptoms of root problems. And until you get to the root problem, those symptoms are still going to exist. So instead of seeing behavior as quote unquote problematic and toxic, take a moment to see, like, okay, do they feel safe? Do they feel comforted? Do they feel secure? Do they feel they're being heard? Do they feel validated? And the list goes on. So any kind of quote unquote negative behavior is a result of some kind of root or need that's not being addressed within them. And until that need is met, that behavior is not going to change.
Yep. Love that. Okay, so the last thing that we just want to talk about before we pop off of this episode is coping with rejection sensitivity dysphoria, but also coping with ADHD and stuff as well. So the first one kind of ties to rejection sensitivity dysphoria that I'm going to talk about. So this is a coping tool that was coined and created by Caroline McGuire. And I use it with some of my clients. I also use it for myself. And it doesn't always work, but the more tools that we have in our toolbox, the more prepared we are with whatever comes about, right?
It's all about options.
So just gather the tools, stick them in your toolbox, use them as you need them and as they work for you. So this one is called the 4 R's. And so the 4 R's are recognize, respond, reflect, and reframe. So what we're doing is the very first thing is we're recognizing where we are in the situation emotionally. So if we are so emotional that we can feel ourselves, we're hyperventilating, we're crying, that is a red. So this is going to be red, yellow, green, right? So recognize where we are. So if we're a red, then we are on just taking care of ourselves, right? We're not worried about responding to the situation. We're not worried about anything else. At that point, we turn inside and we take care of ourselves, whether that's take a nap, whether that's do a special interest. You're separating yourself from whatever it is that has brought you into the red. Okay. And then as you come down into the yellow and the green, then you move on to, so respond. And you're going to respond at the level that's on par with red, yellow, green. If it's red, you're taking time away. If it's yellow, then maybe we do some breath work, right? Maybe we just take some time to really check in with ourselves and our needs in that moment so we stay out of the red. If we're green, then we get to respond because we're here, we're prepared to respond, our feelings are valid, etc. So then we respond at a level that's on par. And then we reflect. And this is reflecting on the facts of the situation. We're not able to do that if we're in the red, right? If we're in the red, we are triggered. We are in our meltdown space. We are in the trauma drama, and we can't get into the reflecting and the reframing part. So when we reflect, we check on the facts. We recognize where maybe we distorted the situation a little bit. Maybe we were in our trauma drama and we were reflecting based on our inner child, right? So we get to kind of then reflect on the situation and reframe it so that now it's not our trauma drama mind that is making the story up for us, but it's the facts that we've discussed. It's the actual situation and our feelings and our emotions. And then we get to give grace wherever that is, to ourselves, to the other person, to the situation, based from a place that still is safe for us, right? Because that is the goal the whole way through, is that we stay safe, right? So the 4 R's: recognize where we are, respond in a way that's on par with the red, yellow, green of where we are. And then when we're ready, we reflect and we reframe. So I hope that made sense and wasn't too much. Okay. So
but again, you're talking to yourself. So
yeah. So let me know if that, didn't make sense, or if you need any more kind of guidance or whatever. But it is a really good tool that can help in certain situations, but again, not going to be for everyone, and that's okay too.
So I was just going to piggyback off of that. So what I do is very similar, and I help my clients become more mindful of their thoughts and recognizing, just because you feel something doesn't mean that you automatically have to knee-jerk respond in that moment. My biggest thing that I tell clients: pause. Even if you just take literally like 5 seconds, makes a huge difference into how you respond, especially if you're emotionally triggered. Mm-hmm. So just taking a few deep breaths and questioning the validity, not even the validity, questioning well, yeah, the validity of your perception. Your feelings are valid, but your perception might not be. And that's where the difference lies. So you have to then check in with yourself and say, like, okay, if I perceive that this person is attacking me, pause, take a few breaths, question the validity of that perception. Is that really what happened? Is that valid? Some other questions that you could ask are like, have they done anything else, to prove this belief is accurate or this
pattern
perception is accurate?
recognition.
Exactly. What have they actually done to support your perception, like in that moment, and just as a general, as far as their character, as far as their past behavior? Have they actually proven to you that they don't like you? Or has their action shown that it's actually the opposite, and that they do support you, they do care about you, they have done X, Y, and Z things for you, and recently at that. So is that really a perception that's valid? So things of that nature. Just question, just pause, question,
Reflect, yep, question.
and then move forward. And then, like Mary said, if you're on red, shut it down. That's it. Just end the conversation. Say, I can't do this right now. We can come back to this at a later time when I'm more regulated, or I need space, or I need to go take a walk, or I need processing time. And then another thing that I always say is I love safe words. And a lot of the times, especially for neurodivergent and specifically autistic people, because sometimes we struggle with alexithymia, which is not knowing what we're feeling or not being able to differentiate the different emotions when we're emotionally charged. In that moment, is a safe word. So it might be easier between the two of you to have a safe word that the person can just say that word and everything stops. Like there's no more discussion. It's a boundary has been set, and then you come back to it later. And that might be easier to say that word, just that word, than to be able to express like, I'm frustrated right now, or I can't talk about this right now. It's just that this is the word. And like I said, I'm a big, huge fan of everybody. I believe all couples, no matter what the situation, should have safe words, and not just specifically for the sexual reasons, but outside of that as well. But especially neurodivergent people, when we struggle expressing ourselves, it's just nice to be able to just say one word and then, people respond to that without having to put the labor and the work for us to actually get our words together. Because a lot of us also struggle with selective mutism when we're emotionally charged as well. So safe words.
Full agree. Okay, so at this point, we will continue to share information and coping strategies. I'm pretty sure Asiatu has already posted on our Patreon some other like coping stuff before this episode came out about other things. So make sure to check out our Patreon because we're going to be giving more and more exclusives there, including classes and other stuff that's super fun that we're doing. And Asiatu has a couple plugs about the things that we have been doing and the things that we're gonna be doing. And then, we'll pop off of here with this episode. So
plug time. One, thank you so much for all of those who bought tickets to the Racism 101 class. Thank you for being there. It was a wonderful class. I loved the Q&A. I thought it was just wonderful. It just went beyond my expectations. So thank you.
And we got to give 20% of the ticket funds to someone in our community, and that you can find all that info on our page. But that for us was just
the best part.
The best part, like to be able to, like Asiatu and I say often, like when we win, we all win, like our community wins, and that we really truly mean that. So thank you so much for supporting us, so that we can pass that to everyone that we can. And
please check out our posts on our page, specifically to the person in which we gave it to, Sunny, because Sunny is in need of help ASAP because for rent, and which
They're
is
a
coming
great
out.
advocate in our community, and
Black,
they
trans,
deserve our
autistic,
support.
amazing advocate, mutual aid supporter, like just a wonderful just person all the way around. So please check that out. I have been putting it in my stories. I will continue to share it in my stories, as well as I had a post yesterday with the information. But yes, and please share that information because Sunny still needs help.
Yeah, and that's on at Asiatu.coach and at audacious.autistics on Instagram. You can find all of that information, and mine, which is at Healing Services. Sorry. Okay.
And no, you're fine. There's new merchandise.
Yay!
Go where you're watered, and putting the fun in dysfunction. Executive dysfunction are out now for merch to be purchased. I have phone cases, water bottles, t-shirts, hoodies,
masks,
a whole bunch of
all
stuff.
kinds of good stuff.
All types of stuff. Check that out. The link is in my bio or at the link to audacious.autistics or asiatu.coach. If you go to my link tree or either of those link trees, you can find the link there. You can find a link there for any of the stuff that I'm talking about right now. Next is, did I say gender? Our next class is going to be Gender 101? I don't even know if I said that.
You haven't done.
Okay. Our next class is going to be Gender 101. Stay tuned for details. Yeah, that should be coming up in the next few weeks. We'll let you know when it's going to be. Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
I'm super excited. And for the classes, just so everybody knows, for the classes, if you are interested in taking our classes and getting them at a very discounted rate, then I would consider checking out the top tier of our Patreon. And those you get all of the classes, you get access to all of the classes by being a top tier Patreon supporter. So check that out if it's something that you're interested in and maybe financially beneficial for you. And we absolutely appreciate all of our Patreon people because that membership is monthly for us. So it allows us to know and have kind of a consistent income coming through. So, check that out if the classes are something that you'll be interested in.
And last but certainly not least, new Aura products. So this is the Potent Potion, which is relief, relax, and sleep. I've been taking this for my insomnia. Another thing ADHDers and ADHDers struggle with is insomnia. This right here is amazing. Knocks you out, but in a very nice, subtle way. You wake up, you don't have a hangover, really good sleep. Highly recommend. And it's also great for pain relief as well, and just stress in general. It's a nice relaxation. They also have the Potent Honey. The potion is actually the most potent of their products. The honey is the second most. It's just great for everything, to be honest. But insomnia, also lack of appetite that I struggle with being autistic. I don't have a pouch of the gummies because I ate them all and I forgot to keep the pouch. But I like the gummies specifically for anxiety. They're not as potent as either of those two. So it's not quite as intense, which is really good if you have stuff to do, but you just want to take the edge off and just feel a bit more relaxed and not have to worry about anxiety. The gummies I highly recommend for that. If you use my name, Asiatu, the code Asiatu, you can get buy one, get one free. I don't know how much longer that's going to be the case, so check them out. It's newaura.com. And again, you can get the link from my bio link tree at asiatu.coach. I think that's everything.
Perfect. Yay. Well,
and thanks for everybody who has bought stuff and merch and New Aura stuff. Thank you. Very appreciative. I appreciate y'all. Y'all awesome.
So much. Y'all. So much. All right. Thank you all for joining us for our second episode about ADHD and autism. Forks, spoons, and everything in between. We release new monthly episodes. But if you want to receive more content like this, one-on-one communication, access to our classes, or you just want to help support us, we would love to have you join our Patreon, where we offer exclusives, merchandise, bonus episodes, and live interactive chat forums. So be sure to share your stories and your questions with us on social media. We love to connect and hear from our community. So thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.